Okay, we are waiting for a few more people. And then we're going to start. We're going to start on Bryan Kohberger. I have not looked at this for a little while now, but we're going to start. We're going to see what awaits him. Okay. Let's take a peek. All right, so I need questions ahead of time. Let me know if you want to speak and ask questions about this situation. All right. I know it's a controversial situation with Bryan Kohberger. I know that people are wondering why it's taking so long and why a psychic of my caliber would defend this guy's innocence, but I have to go with what I'm seeing. So I'm going to look again. I'm going to look fresh. I'm going to look at what I feel is, his involvement. Is Bryan Kohberger actually the murderer, or is he being set up by somebody else? Let me just take a look. Again, this is Psychic Carla Barron. I am a psychic. I am a profiler. I am a psychic profiler. I work on these cases all the time. But I always allow myself the chance to learn something new. So let me look. Let me see. Is Bryan Kohberger a murderer? Let me see if, let's just ask the most simple of questions. Is Bryan Kohberger a murderer? Has he murdered anyone? Let me just see what the universe is telling me. Just relax and breathe. First thing, no, he is not a murderer. Why is he involved in this? Let me ask that. Let's ask the universe. Why is Bryan Kohberger actually involved in this? Why is he involved in this? Karmically, for whatever reason, why? Okay. The word targeted is coming up. Let me look at why he was targeted and by whom. Why was Bryan Kohberger targeted in this situation where he is accused of murdering these four people, these four individuals known as the Idaho Four? Why is Bryan Kohberger being accused? How are they actually connecting him to this? Let me see. Why Bryan? Why is Bryan the one that was selected? Again, okay. I don't remember if I actually saw this before in my earlier threads when I was posting about this, when this first happened, when this murder, this horrific murder actually first happened. But I saw a female with dark hair who actually had a grudge against these people for whatever reason. And she is involved in this somehow karmically. She is actually, she has dark hair, and I see her involved as why this got spun this way. All right, let me keep looking. Let's keep looking. Is Bryan Kohberger actually innocent of this crime of murdering these 4 people, the Idaho 4? I'm not going to say their names because I don't want to disrespect them with Brian's name. So I'm just going to say the Idaho 4. Are these 4 people, is the murderer of these 4 people Bryan Kohberger? Again, I'm getting this woman with dark hair, this female. I have to say, this has something to do with it. It looks like this. I also get a transaction. I also get like some sort of deal was made. Let me see why. Why is Bryan Kohberger being accused of murder? Why is this happening? If I see in the beginning he didn't do it, why is this happening? Okay. They couldn't come up with anybody else. That's the problem with this. They could not come up with another suspect that was as interesting as this one was. So they just rolled with it. And I mean, they meaning law enforcement. Is law enforcement sure that Bryan killed these 4 individuals, the Idaho 4? Is law enforcement absolutely sure, beyond the shadow of a doubt? Again, this is a psychic reading, so you guys can't hold me liable for this, but I am going to look. Is Bryan Kohberger actually guilty with evidence to support it from law enforcement? Do they have evidence that he killed these 4 people? Again, okay, twice it's coming up now. It says that some sort of friend is offering their testimony to this effect that Bryan is the person. Let me see if they are correct. Is this person correct in their assessment that Bryan Kohberger is the murderer of these 4 people? Did Bryan order a hit on these 4 people? I don't know. I still get like some guy that's a friend of Bryan's has offered some sort of evidence that he is the perpetrator. Let me just see what's going on here. Did Bryan actually kill these 4 people with his knife? Did he do it? No. And it shows that it was somebody that was associated with him, though. So it was an associate of his. Let's ask the next question. Was Bryan Kohberger set up? Was he set up by this person to take the fall? Well, I'm getting a positive answer on that. So I just think there's somebody else that was kind of mentally unstable, and they just decided that they were going to go do this and prove themselves as worthy. And I think that they actually had a crush on one of the girls, and I will say it's a blonde. Okay. And it looks like he actually decided, okay, I'm going to prove myself. Let me see why he turned on Bryan though. Why did he give statements that Bryan was the perpetrator? It shows yes, he did that. Um so why did he do that? Why did he turn on his friend? Okay. This person has been offered an immunity deal by the prosecution. Let me state that again. This person has been offered an immunity deal by the prosecution for whatever statements they're going to give on behalf of the prosecution. I'm not going to change that. That is pretty certain. So I need to know if anybody has questions. I know you do. So let's start. Who wants to go first? Who wants to ask whatever they need to ask about Bryan Kohberger? Because this is your chance. I'm going to look. I'm going to look to see what I see. So I know you're afraid to let me be the only one to hold this opinion, but I see what I see, and you know I work on these things. So go ahead and ask your question. Otherwise, I'll just keep going with what I see. If you have a different question from material that I'm looking at as to procedure, as to evidence, as to the white elantra, as to any of this stuff, you need to ask me now because I'm not going to invite questions unless you ask me pretty soon. Okay? All right, so request to speak. Otherwise, I'm going to keep looking. Let's see what's going on here. Why did Bryan end up in the scope of these law enforcement individuals? Why was he the one? Let me see why he was chosen. They were at a dead end. They didn't have anything. They needed to come up with an answer that would satisfy the public, the families, why the hell this happened. Okay, let's keep going. Is Bryan Kohberger guilty of anything in regard to the murder of these four individuals called the Idaho Four? Is he guilty of anything with them? Let me look. Okay. I think he was part of like either like a little chat group or a group of individuals where he indicated, you know, he he thought these women were attractive, and I don't really think anything went beyond that. The whole K-bar knife. Let me look at the knife. Why? Why was that purchase made for the K-bar knife? For what purpose? Okay, this is not good. Right? This is where he gets into a little bit of trouble. I honestly think, okay, I'm just going to make a statement and we'll see if this comes true. But I am seeing that a friend of his, an associate, it could be the same person that actually did the crime. I'll look at that next. But I'm looking at the K bar knife purchase was for a friend. They didn't have a good credit card, or they didn't have an Amazon account, or they weren't able to buy it. So they gave him cash so that he could buy it for them. And he was just being a good friend. He didn't know why they were buying it. He didn't ask why. He just said, okay. They handed him cash. He said, all right, I'll place the order. And I think something along those lines actually happened. So it was like, he was doing a buddy of his a favor. All right, I need questions now because, like, none of this is making sense to me. I haven't looked at Bryan Kohberger for like a long time. Um, I need to know why I'm seeing this stuff. So, some of you I know follow this religiously. So, I need to know if any of you have questions. So, just put the request in. I'll put you in. Audrey, you have a question? Because I know you follow this like crazy. Um, I know other people are listening to see what I have to say about things. Um, I think Brian got himself in a pickle because he was stupid and trying to be a good friend. I really don't think that he has it in him to murder somebody. I don't care about his bushy this or that. I don't care about his bushy eyebrows. I'm not seeing it. I will ask again. Did Bryan Kohberger commit these murders? Did he do it with somebody else? Did he have an accomplice? Did he have somebody else he was committing these murders with? Did he murder the Idaho Four? Did he murder in part or in whole the Idaho Four? Did he have anything to do with this? No. And here's where Ann Taylor is popping up. So she's coming up as she's worried because circumstantial evidence is in there, but there's no reason for it, and they have to find a way of proving that that had nothing to do with a murder. It was actually just helping somebody out. So I think that's why they have another name for a suspect, because I don't think Brian wanted to throw this person under the bus, but he's like, look, I'm not going to lose my life because of this. So I think, you know, I think push came to shove, and maybe she said something to Brian like, hey, Ann Taylor said, hey, look, I'm going to drop this case unless you give me something. So he had to come out with the story. I think he is involved, but on the fringe. I think, yes, he may have socially wanted, he saw pictures of these girls and thought they were attractive and thought that maybe he could have a conversation with them. But that doesn't make him a murderer. Okay. I have yet to see here where he has murdered people. I'm going to ask again. Let's ask again. Has Bryan Kohberger committed murder in any portion of his life? Has Bryan Kohberger ever committed murder? It shows the study of murder, but has he actually done it in real life? No. I mean, he has studied this. I'm going to ask a serious question here. Why has Bryan Kohberger studied murder? Like, what possible interest could he have in it? And I'm just going to look. Is Bryan Kohberger studying murder for a personal reason? What is his reason for studying this so hard? Why does he look into this in such depth? Why is Bryan Kohberger looking into murder? Okay. Again, this girl, this female with darker hair, is coming up as she had, she felt either rejected or there's something going on here where she turned on these individuals. I have to say she made a deal. She made some sort of deal with law enforcement, prosecution, something. It looks like she made a deal. And I think she had an axe to grind with these people. Something happened in their past where she felt excluded. She felt like it was it was, personal for her. Why does she keep coming up every time I ask about Bryan? So was she looking for somebody that, you know, the first person they found that matched the description, they just went for it? I don't know. Um, let's go further. Let's go to the trial. Will Bryan Kohberger be found guilty of these murders in the trial? Right now, it's set for, I believe, August 11th. Will Bryan Kohberger be found guilty for the murder of these four individuals, the Idaho Four? Will he be found guilty by a jury of his peers? Will he be found guilty? See, I still see this guy that throws him under the bus, this friend of his. And this friend of his made a statement that they know that that's who purchased this knife. And, whether they set him up to do that or not, there's no way to really prove that except for the guy that asked for the favor. Will Bryan Kohberger be found guilty of murder for the Idaho Four? Okay. What's weird is I see this guy like sticking by his story, and Brian knows it's a lie, but they're trying to figure out a way to prove it. Brian knows that the story is a lie. It's totally made up as far as why he purchased the knife in the first place. He knows. I am looking at Ann Taylor. She's got she's got a card up her sleeve. So she's not totally sitting there wringing her hands going, how the hell am I going to prove this? She has statements from other people about this witness, about this person that's making this statement. The prosecution is counting on this guy's statement pretty heavily to convict him. The thing is that they're now matching up um, dates and times. They're matching up where this other guy was at various times, his internet activity. I mean, I don't think this guy realizes, the witness, that he is also under the eye of law enforcement. He's also being looked into on the defense side. And Ann Taylor's team is looking into, where was this guy? What was he looking up on the internet? What was his history? Where was he going at what day, what time? So I think they know, they're believing their client. I mean, sometimes you have a defense attorney in a capital case where, they know their client is guilty for sure. I don't think that's the case here, but I'm going to ask, does Ann Taylor think or believe that Bryan Kohberger is guilty of this murder or these murders? Does she believe he was guilty of these murders? Does Ann Taylor believe that Bryan Kohberger killed these people? No. Does she believe that Bryan Kohberger is involved in these murders? I think she feels like he got involved with questionable people. He his activities were kind of weird, kind of off. He studied crime, he studied murder, he studied what this was. So, it makes him look bad when he gets accused. He had a weirdness about him in a social setting. He was not, the easiest guy to accept in a party atmosphere because he was kind of weird. He was a little too intense for a party guy. So I think that she sees that, but she's also trying to explain it where, within a shadow of a doubt, is this jury going to convict him 100%? They believe he did it. Let me ask that. Will the jury convict Bryan Kohberger of murder with the Idaho 4? Okay. See, there's that female. Okay, this female is the star witness and possibly being protected by the prosecution. She has dark hair. They're counting on that to turn the case in their favor. She has a serious grudge against the four people that were murdered. Something happened there, and she doesn't look like she's going to break. Will they find out that this witness is lying? Okay. They're not going to do it by that route, because she looks like she's protected. Either it's sealed or her testimony is sealed. Something's wrong with that. Let me look at how they're going to prove that Bryan is not involved in this. Okay. Well, it looks like there was some other relationship going on here. And they have discovered like some other relationship going on here with these people that were murdered. So the defense is looking to that person as their witness. Is that going to be enough to keep him from death row? Is that going to be enough to protect Bryan Kohberger from being executed? Okay. It looks like there's a stay of execution from what I can see here. So honestly, I think we're looking at they find enough of a glitch to throw a wrench in the works with certain statements that aren't matching up with timelines as far as the star witness that they have. Like there seems to be inaccuracies, inconsistencies. There seems to be something going on there. So again, this female with darker hair has an axe to grind, and she's sticking to her story. Um, let's just skip that and let's go to the actual murderer. Is the murderer someone they knew? Okay, I just want to do a completely different question. Is the murderer of these four young individuals, the Idaho Four, someone that they knew? Okay. Well, the person definitely had dark hair, for sure. Ah, this is interesting. Okay. It's a friend of the girl with dark hair. I'm not done with this yet. I mean, we can do another podcast later, but I mean, that's what I'm picking up now. And I haven't looked at this for a long time, as you guys know. Um, this female with dark hair concerns me. That people like this actually think that they can, play God. Um, I know public opinion has Bryan Kohberger as the guilty one because he's so weird. Look, I'm fine with law enforcement and arresting people that are guilty of crime. I am perfectly fine with that. In fact, I mean, I don't really believe in execution. I believe in life in prison and maybe rehabilitating them in some way, teaching them different ways of being, but killing them isn't solving anything. Killing them isn't making the crime go away, the people that they murdered come back, it just doesn't solve anything. Karmically, it's still there. But if they can possibly learn from their mistake within the same lifetime, I'm kind of all for that. Like, let's see if they can do that. If there's no chance, well, it's life in prison and they don't get any extras, you know? They have to sit with themselves and their conscience for a long time until they pass. And that's the way it works. But all right, let's just recap here. This girl with the dark hair keeps coming up. So let me just see. Is this a younger girl or an older woman? This female with dark hair, younger or older? Okay. Well, it looks like whoever this is being held from there. Okay. There looks like some sort of jealousy about entitlement with one of the individuals that was murdered, one of the girls, that there was a sense of entitlement. There was a money thing. They fought about money. Whoever this person was had an argument, a personal argument with them about money, about something. Is this girl responsible for these 4 deaths? Hmm. There's the person. Yeah, it's almost like a jealousy thing, and then them feeling entitled, and like, who are they? They're not better than me. There was some sort of feeling about that. Okay. Um, they actually harbor a little bit of guilt and sadness about putting Bryan as the victim of this whole mess, but they certainly aren't going to come out and admit anything themselves. They're going to protect their own reputation, their own story, their own alibi for as long as it takes. They are never going to admit that they feel bad or sorry or have any regret about what's happening to Bryan Kohberger. They don't seem to care. They're a little bit sad about it, but if it's him against them, they're going to choose themselves. So let me just keep going. Is Bryan Kohberger going to be put to death for this crime? Yeah, this friend is doubling down on their story. Let me see. Will Bryan Kohberger be found guilty by a jury of his peers? Will he be found guilty in August? Okay, they're going to look for an extension on this trial. I mean, the defense looks like they have something on this girl with dark hair. So let's stay tuned for that. Um, it looks like the defense has something on her. And they have other people testifying about like her behavior and what's going on here. So something is happening with this. I don't have time every day. I'm too busy doing my personal readings. So I don't have time to comb through Bryan Kohberger updates and news. So you guys have to correct me if I'm wrong about something. Um, but from what it looks like, the defense has some evidence that this girl may be lying. And this is the star witness for the prosecution. You know, she's garnered some sort of immunity deal. So I think it's going to be her statement will be sealed, you know, so they don't know who she is. Um, but I have a feeling, you know, the defense knows who she is, and they've gathered some information about her that could be very damning for them on the prosecution side. So, unless you guys have other questions, I mean, we'll leave it at this, but so far, this is what I'm seeing about this case. It looks like they may ask for a continuance. Again, I know that one hasn't been granted for August, but I think they're able to come up with enough information about this star witness where, you know, the prosecution is going to need more time to prepare, because I think they didn't factor in the fact the defense finding out either through a private investigator or someone else involved in this case. I don't think they factored in that the defense and Ann Taylor's team could uncover all this dirt on this girl with dark hair, and her statement is the primary reason why the prosecution is going with their story. You know, that's the whole premise of their case. So honestly, I think Bryan got himself in a stupid situation socially. He did something for a friend and bought a knife for a friend or something, because the friend was, you know, said, look, hey, I lost my Amazon account or whatever, can you buy this for me, I'll give you cash. It was something stupid like that, like a no-brainer, like nobody even thought about it. Nobody thought about it. It was something along those terms. So anyway, all right, last call for any questions. I'm surprised you guys are all silent over there. What's going on? What's happening? You guys always have questions. Why are you so silent? Look, if you want to make your voice known and you want to ask a question, ask now. If I didn't cover anything with what I've just said, ask now. All right, hold on. All right, Audrey, give it to me straight. What do you got? You have to turn on your speaker. Okay, there you go.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. Can you hear me?
I can. So, what I've said so far, correct me on stuff I didn't get right, but because I haven't really followed this in the past, like, I don't know, 6 months or so, I've been so busy, I haven't had a chance to keep up on what's happening. So, what, if anything, that I've said so far is questionable or you need to clarify?
I think you were right on. There wasn't anything that didn't go with what has been going on, in my opinion. So that was
Okay.
awesome.
Well, I mean, you know, I mean, it's good that I haven't been reading the news and whatever, and I've been too busy to like check into news stories because I just, uh, you know, sometimes I get busy because I'm working. Um, so, in light of what I've already said, what additional question do you have? Because I know you follow this case like it's like it's your other life.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm curious to know if you have any information on like the medical time of death, like the medical aspect.
Okay. The medical time of death. All right. First of all, you need to say what they have said the time of death is, and then I'll look to see
Ah.
if it flashes for me that tells me that it is not correct. So what is the time of death that's being stated now?
Well, the according to the PCA, the time of death for all of them was just after 4 a.m. But on the toxicology or the autopsy paper, it all says 12 p.m. when the 911 call was made.
Okay. So just after midnight, the 911. What time
In
was
the
that?
afternoon, 12 in the afternoon.
Oh, I see. So what is your question though? Because those are two different questions.
Yeah.
You're wanting to know if they delayed the 911 call? I
No, maybe if all the times of death were the same time, or if they could have been like an hour apart.
Oh, okay. Were all the times of death of the four unfortunate souls that were victims of this murder spree, were they all killed during the same, let's say, 20-minute period? Were they all killed at the same time? Okay. This was done with such precision. Oh my God. Such precision. Um, First of all, this was planned. This was not impulse, this particular crime. It looks like, let me see if they meant to kill all four of them. Were all four meant to be victims of this crime, of this murder? Yes, all four. What about the other two that were not killed, that were in the bottom part of the house? Were they meant to be victims as well? Were the two that remained alive and they were survivors, were they meant to be victims in this crime? The Idaho Four. Okay, I think the person got interrupted. That's what keeps coming up. I think they got interrupted and they had to leave. Um, can Audrey, can you say the first names of the two survivors for me so that I can look at them?
Dylan and Bethany.
Okay. Were Dylan and Bethany meant to be murdered along with the other four? Dylan and Bethany, were they meant to be victims and murdered? No, and again, this girl with the darker hair is the reason. There was a personal axe to grind with one of the females with blonder hair. Again, this is saying that they were not meant to be victims. Um, Let me see if all four that were killed, were they meant to be killed? All four of them. Yes, all four were meant to be killed. But I also get an interruption. Let me see what the interruption was. What was the interruption of this crime? Okay. The person doing this. Okay, I need to look to see if there's more than one murder person, like more than one murderer doing this crime of 4 people. Was there more than one murderer in the Idaho 4? More than one. Yes. Oh, okay. The interruption may be that one of the guys, there were two, one of the guys may have left early and said, "Hey, man, I'm out. I can't do this anymore." And like he didn't have the stomach for it. And the other guy finished it. I'm going to look at the sheath of the K-bar knife, and I'm going to look to see if that was planted by somebody. Was the K-bar knife sheath planted underneath one of the victims in the same bed? Was the sheath planted by someone? Was the knife, the K-bar knife sheath planted? Oh my God, this girl with dark hair again. I mean, seriously, she's coming up like 10 times now. Audrey, who's this girl with darker hair?
The first one who comes to mind is Emma Bailey. But
Oh my God, she just won't stop coming up. She was angry. She was vengeful. She was done with being treated the way she was being treated.
I don't
Whoever
know.
this was, it was, I mean, she's definitely involved. But I also get that she's protected. I wonder who's protecting her. Um, it looks like the prosecution has her as a star witness, but it looks like her testimony is being sealed. It's okay. Let me ask, if is it Emma Emma Bailey? Bailey? Was that the name?
Yes.
Okay, Emma Bailey. Is that who I'm seeing with the dark hair? Emma Bailey. Well, it could be. It could be. Does she have an association with see, the thing is, it looks like the woman with darker hair, the female, has a relationship somehow with the friend that is throwing Bryan under the bus. That's what it looks like. Like those two are in cahoots, and then Bryan just happened to be some weird, you know, fall guy for them, because I get in a way that Bryan just doesn't have the social skills, and he's just like, "Hey man, I'll do a favor for you." Like he doesn't think it through. Like he's not sociable enough to know that these people are using him. Look, I'm fine if he did it, but I'm not fine that he did it. That's the thing. I don't see that he committed these crimes. Still. And I haven't even looked at this for over 6 months. I haven't looked at this case at all. So, what other questions do you have, Audrey? Anything?
Was Emma Bailey there?
Oh, at the house?
Yeah.
Was Emma Bailey at the house the night of the murders? And say the date again?
November 13th.
2022.
Two.
2022,
Yes.
November 13th, 2022, was Emma Bailey in the house? See, here's the thing. I see that the guy who did this was the one who had feelings for somebody. I see that he's friends with, it looks like the relationship diorama that I'm going to make here is the friend is friends with Bryan or an acquaintance or whatever. And Bryan was hurting for friendship anyway, socially. So, he was trying to be a friend. I think that this guy was smitten after one of the girls that was murdered. And I see that, he carried this feeling for this, and I think that somehow, some way, there was a rejection there. I think the rejection happened, I don't know, a while before November 13th. I don't get that any of this that caused the murders happened on that same night. I think this is something that was building for a long time. I mean, I will even go so far as to say that Bryan needed to be friends with somebody so much that he would allow them to use his car, like, hey, buddy, can I borrow your car? I have to make a quick run. I would even go so far as to say that. I don't even know what I'm talking about here, but that's kind of the relationship I'm seeing, that Bryan was hurting for social standing, and he wanted he wanted to be known as somebody who was a good guy, a good friend. So, if this guy who committed these murders out of some sort of passion, it was a passion crime because he was jilted or rejected, which is more what I see. Um, that he would have no problem asking his friend Bryan if he could borrow his car. And Bryan would be like, hey, man, yeah, go ahead. Just bring it back. I mean, I think Bryan was easygoing when it came to like friendships. He had very few people that understood who he was. And I think that, he didn't see anything wrong with that. Most people would be like, okay, why do you need my car? Where are you taking it? Like, how long are you going to be gone? Like, I think Bryan just wanted to be a good friend. So that's kind of what I'm seeing the dynamic is between Bryan and this other person. Where hardly anybody paid attention to him on a social level, and this one guy was talking to him and being his friend. But what Bryan didn't realize was this guy was just, could easily turn his loyalty based on, whatever else was happening there. So this guy was like, I'm not going down for this. And, the thing is that I think it was a while before Bryan turned in this guy's name. I think Bryan was still trying to be a friend, even when he was incarcerated. So, you know, I just think that it came out recently. I think the threat of his defense team going away and Ann Taylor saying, hey, look, I need something or I gotta go. I gotta hand this off to somebody else. And I think some more information came out. I think Bryan protected that person's identity for a while before he gave it up. Audrey, talk to me about that.
I think that's definitely possible.
Um, there's a, I mean, the thing is that why did this happen? I mean, if this is a crime of somebody just not, somebody being rejected by somebody they were stalking or somebody they fell in love with, from afar, I don't think it was Bryan that was having those feelings. First of all, I see Bryan as a very stoic person. Not somebody, he's almost like like a religious figure to me, like a stoic, priest or something. He doesn't look like a person that in my psychic eye, he doesn't look like a person that, oh, he's longing after someone. If he was online, asking about these other women, it was for his friend. Has anybody even thought about the possibility? He was doing it to be a good friend to his friend because his friend had a crush on one of the girls. So he was scoping it out for his friend. He was the wingman. He was doing, what a good friend does. Was Bryan interested? Let me look. Was Bryan interested in dating any of the women in that house, in the Idaho 4 house? Was Bryan Kohberger interested in dating any of those girls? I mean, he thought they were attractive, yes. But I think that here's the difference between Bryan and somebody else, the person that actually did this. Bryan like figured, okay, they're way out of my league and I'm just going to drop it. I think those girls were considered very attractive by a number of men that were in that town, and I think Bryan looked at it and said, well, they're not responding to me online. They're not saying anything to me. So I guess it's not me. He's much more self deprecating than what they paint. Much more self deprecating. I see him pulling back and not believing that he could ever get girls of this caliber to look at him or date him or anything else. But the other guy is the problem. The other guy that was friends with him is the problem because he felt like superior to all that. And who are these girls to like act like that to him? That there was a problem with the other guy's mental state. I see that he was mentally, um, I also see drug use with the guy. So I see that he was extremely unstable and just, he didn't live in a sense of reality like the rest of us. So he imagined that these girls were just, who do they think they are? The person that killed them had that thought in mind while they were doing this. Who do they think they are? Like, I'm here to take you down a peg. Like, who the hell do you think you are? So that seems to be the pervading sentiment during the crime itself. Okay. I mean, I know I'm talking about this clinically. I don't wish anybody dead. And I just, but if I'm going to look at this as a psychic profiler on crime scenes, like what I have done for many years, I have to look at it in a very clinical way. Um, Audrey, any other thoughts on what I've said?
That all sounds right on. Yeah.
Any other question that has been burning in your brain?
Well, do you see anything that this person would wear a lot or say a lot? Is there anything that comes across that is strong about him? Any qualities?
As far as like identifying characteristics where he would stand out amongst the other ones?
Yeah.
Let me look. Um, with his friends, like whoever his friends are, he seems to have a really short temper. Like like so short that people are afraid to go near him and they just tell him whatever he wants to hear. A extremely short temper. Let me look at anything else. Is there anything else about this guy that stands out? I think he's shorter than Brian. That's the first thing that I'm seeing. How tall is Brian?
Between 6 or 6'3", people aren't sure, but they're right there.
I mean,
It's
there must be a measurement by now. I mean, he went to prison, right? Does
Look,
anybody else know how tall Bryan Kohberger is? Please ask a request because I need to know how tall the guy is. Does anybody know how tall Bryan Kohberger is? All right. Anyway, the guy that did this is shorter than Brian.
so that'd be shorter than 6 foot. I think 6 foot is on his driver's license.
Is it? Can somebody confirm that? Anybody else? All right, we'll wait on that. But from what I'm seeing, when I see Brian standing next to the guy looks shorter than Brian. You asked me for, all right, Shelly, do you want to say something here? Because you keep putting thumbs up. So what do you want to say? Ask me, request to speak. What do you know as far as details on this? Request to speak if you want to tell me. All right, so part of what I'm seeing is his stature. He just looks shorter and he looks stockier than Brian. Like not so long, and lanky. He looks stockier. Like his shoulders look more pronounced. Um, Again, this girl with the dark hair is definitely a player in this. She is she is with this from day one. This was planned. This was not some random act of murder. This wasn't something impulsive. This was definitely planned, and it was planned for that night. That's what I'm seeing. Let me ask if, because I believe, am I correct in assuming, Audrey, that um, that one of the girls wasn't meant to be there, but she was there visiting one of the other girls?
Yes,
Okay, what was her first name?
Kaylee.
Kaylee. All right, Consalvis, right? All right,
Right.
so let me look at her. Was Kaylee meant to be murdered along with the rest? Was she meant to be murdered along with the rest? That was the only wild card that was in there. That's what I'm seeing. Like, I don't think that she was meant to be, but she contributed to like the whole problem that this girl with darker hair had with that house. Like, I don't think that she was meant to be part of this, but because I see that that date of November 13th was chosen before, long before this. Like they knew a party was going to be happening. And they said, okay, that's it. So let me ask you this. Was Kaylee meant to be there that night, or was she meant to be there, or was this a last minute decision on Kaylee's part to go visit her friend?
It said that Dylan invited her back to be her plus one at a party. But is the woman with brown hair, is she a sorority sister?
All right, let me look at that. Is she a sorority sister? No, no. She was rejected or something. No, she's not a sorority sister. So, how does that change the narrative from what you were saying?
Nothing. I think that just confirms more that it could be Emma Bailey, because Emma Bailey wasn't a sorority sister, but I'm
Okay.
curious.
I'm just looking at what they're telling me. So, and they meaning spirit guides, the universe, that's what I usually tap into for this stuff. Um, all right. I need to know if anybody else has any other questions. Audrey, thank you for filling in some of the detail. um, Anybody else have any other questions they want to pose before I wrap it up? But I mean, this is kind of what I'm seeing with this thing. I think that if they do get a stay of execution or whatever, it's because this detail about this witness is going to come out. This witness, this female, and there are other people, witnesses to what this female said, how she was, her private gripes about and arguments about these girls in the house. I think it's like new information that's coming to light, and I think it's the defense team that uncovers this, whether it's their private investigators going undercover or whatever. That's what I'm seeing. So they're able to collect more information that does cast a shadow on the people involved. I mean, it just, was this some accident? Hell no. Was this planned? Yes, this was planned. This was definitely someone who had a personal axe to grind with these individuals. This was not some random murder spree of a house of people that were having a good time and the person is just interested in murdering somebody. This was a personal connection with one or more people in that house and a feeling of, okay, who do they think they are? And it was that sort of sentiment that drove this. That's very frightening to me that that exists. But all right, anybody else have a question? Do you guys want to chime in with any last minute whatever? I mean, we'll revisit this again as we get closer to that August 11th date, but it's your chance now to ask me the question while I'm in the zone, while I'm looking at Bryan Kohberger in this situation. Anybody else have a question? If not, if you guys are all good, I will go ahead and sign off and we'll go ahead and post this up on all the platforms. You can listen to it again. Um, but this is kind of the read on, it's a fresh read since I haven't looked at it for over at least 6 months. I haven't followed the news and what's going on. So if you need to have another one of these on Bryan Kohberger, make sure you post it in my feed here on Twitter and or X or whatever the hell they're calling this platform now. And let me know, and we'll schedule another. But right now, this is, where the reading sits. Again, this is Psychic Carla Barron. I have been known to psychically profile crime scenes, murder cases, missing persons. I have been known to do this for quite some time. In fact, I'm one of the originals. So, uh, for whatever it's worth, this is what I've seen. I'm Bryan Kohberger. Until next time, you guys, uh, have a good night and join me again. Thanks for coming by. Okay. And thanks for the questions. Bye bye.